go for those.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Pat, and I am an alcoholic, and I have a sobriety date of February 22nd, 1992, and for that, I'm truly grateful. I'll set my little timer here so that I don't go over and just stay within the confines of the meeting. First, I'd like to say, give my condolences to two of your members who passed during Zoom. And it's amazing to me that I get to go all over the world. When the pandemic started, it was amazing. Alcoholics Anonymous was online here in Texas just a few days after we got locked down. So I know in your states, the same thing happened. Couple of alcoholics got together and said, hey, we got to have a Zoom meeting. If we're not meeting in the buildings, we need to be able to reach those alcoholics who are out there, those who are in recovery and those who are looking for recovery. So I am truly grateful for Zoom. This is the time that I can travel and not lose my luggage. So I'm in Tennessee and I have not lost my luggage yet. I'm going to tell you a little bit of what it was like, what happened, and what I'm like today. I like to really stay in the solution, but to qualify myself as an alcoholic, this is what happens when I drink. I take a drink of alcohol and my mind goes to a different place. And here's where my mind goes. I take that drink of 151 rum, and then all of a sudden I'm tall, I have big boobs, and I'm a great dancer. If you meet me in person, I'm 4'11" and a fourth, so I'm not tall. I had breast cancer 10 years ago, so I'm not well endowed like Dolly Parton. So, but I am a good dancer, and I know that. I grew up in an alcoholic home, but that doesn't make me an alcoholic. What makes me an alcoholic is the fact that when I take a drop of alcohol in my system, something happens like it did for my father, who was an alcoholic. And for a long time, I thought, I was enjoying drinking. I made a choice to drink. I had pretty little glasses to drink out of. I had foo-foo drinks, but as my disease progressed in me, my alcoholism also continued to make me go higher with the liquor content. I was a rum drinker. I drank 151 rum. I was a beer drinker. I was a schnapps drinker. I was a Kahlua drinker. I was an Irish Bailey drinker. The only thing that really gave me an allergic reaction was tequila. And I never drank tequila again, but I drank everything else that my hands could get on. I'm from a large family. I have 6 brothers, and I have 2 sisters, so there are 9 of us. I'm the only one that's in AA. None of my siblings are in AA or in Al-Anon, but that's their deal and not mine. I have a home group here in Fort Worth, Texas. It's called the Glass House Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. And since I walked into the door on February 22nd, 1992, that's been my home group since the pandemic. I also have a Zoom home group, which is the PG and Chill group that meets every morning at 6:30 a.m. It's a Pacific Standard Time. And so here in Texas, it's 8:30, but out there in LA, it's 6:30. And it's a good morning meeting. I have a commitment to that meeting. I'm security. And when Stephen said I could unmute myself and I saw the little security deal on the bottom of my deal, I was like, I did security this morning. I was trying to keep out the Zoom bombers. But anyway, I'm glad to be here. I will tell you that I have a sponsor. Her name is Sharon C., and she lives in LA. And I see her a lot on Zoom. because we have a sponsorship meeting that we have every Thursday. And we have that. And then I go see her, follow her around speaking. And I've only had so far 2 sponsors. And that's what I wanted to talk about today is sponsorship and carrying the message to the suffering alcoholic. The sponsor that I walked into the rooms of Glass House was Sherry R. She was my first sponsor for 22 years until she passed away. And I will tell you that Sherry gave me a great foundation for 22 years. Sharon gives me a great foundation because Sharon was Sherry's sponsor. So I went from having Sharon as a grand sponsor to having her now as a sponsor. She gets me. She knows me. And I will tell you this. I know the telephone number of my sponsor. I physically dial her number every Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. because that's my time to call. And I never miss that time to call. I always remember, because I have it set on my cell phone to go off. And it's, I enjoy talking to my sponsor. When I came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous in February of 1992, I was broken. I had no more good ideas. And I said the only prayer that I knew how to say the day before I walked into Alcoholics Anonymous. And that prayer, I was out drinking with a few teacher friends, and they went home. And I left the bar with them. But when they all got in their cars and pulled out of the driveway, and I'm sitting in my car, I got out of the car and went back into the bar. That's the kind of drunk I am. And I kept drinking and drinking that evening. And the thing that happened for me, and it happened a couple of times when I was out there drinking, my body would get drunk, but my mind was stone cold sober. And here's the thought that always happened. Every time that happened to me, I would always say, this must be how my father felt. And you see, I was the type of person who did not want to be like my father. So I took another drink because I tried to drown that thought. But that last night, which was not any different than the other nights before, because I was a daily drinker, because I was always trying to get the edge off. I'm a kindergarten teacher. So when you're in a classroom full of little kids, you got to have something at the end of the day to look forward to. And that's what I did. I drank every day at happy hour. And I knew all the ladies night, which night that was. Wednesday night, hit this bar. Thursday night, hit this bar. Friday night, hit this bar. And Saturdays. And I just drank every day. So by the time I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, the prayer I'd said the night before was, God, I can't do this anymore. And you see, I had some friends who had been going to Alcoholics Anonymous, and they had taken me to a couple of meetings, and I never picked up one of those desire chips that they offer at the beginning of when you're in person, because, we don't offer the desire chips, but we give chips on Zoom. I remember saying to one of my friends, now when I take this desire chip, because here's how it goes, they would say these words, who has a desire not to drink today for 24 hours? And my friend would nudge me and say, raise your hand. And I would raise my hand and I go up and get a chip. And the night that I did that, I remember thinking, at this time I was teaching first grade. And I remember getting that chip at that meeting. And I left that meeting, went home, and just kept rubbing that chip. And then the next morning when I got up, I put that chip in my pocket. I went to work like I normally do, was in the classroom with these 6-year-olds, 25 of them, and something wasn't going right. And I remember reaching in my pocket and rubbing that desire chip. And I kept rubbing that desire chip because I thought it was kryptonite or it was going to save me that day. And what happened for me that day was I kept saying to myself, I'm not drinking today. I'm not drinking today. by God, I'm not drinking today, but if this kid doesn't sit down, I'm going to slap the crap out of her. And I remember thinking those thoughts to myself and getting home and not drinking the whole day. And I'm like, it was gritting my teeth saying to myself, I'm not drinking today. I'm not drinking today. The next day, after not drinking the day before, I called my friend who had taken me to a meeting and asked me, to take that desire test. So I'm sitting on the phone talking with her, and she had been coming for a few weeks. She said, well, what are you doing now? I said, well, I'm having a beer. You just told me I just didn't have to drink for 24 hours. But you see, I didn't understand this program of Alcoholics Anonymous. She said to me, she said, well, Pat, you might want to try not drinking again for another 24 hours and try to see if you can get a couple of 24 hours each day. And I thought to myself, there's no way in heck I can do that. But that last night that I drank, the last night that was no different than any other night, all I could think about was, God, I can't do this anymore. And so I came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous on the 22nd of February of 1992. And I will tell you this, if you're new, and just keep coming. They tell you to get a sponsor. I sat in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous for a few weeks without a sponsor. You see, when I went into the rooms, I would be okay for that hour. It felt like I could breathe. It just felt like I could breathe for just a moment. But when I would leave and get home, I locked myself in the room with somebody who was going to kill me all the time. You see, when I'm not drinking, I'm irritable, restless, and discontent, just like it says in the big book. And if I don't have a substitute, a spiritual substitute that will get me through the nights, and I will tell you, I had nightmares because I wasn't, I didn't go to a treatment center. I had the night sweats. I would wake up stark crazy in the dark at 3:00 in the morning, feeling like there were things crawling all over my body, but I was afraid to turn on the lights because I felt that if I turned on the lights, whatever I was imagining that was crawling on my body was really there. You see, I have a disease of perception. And when my disease of perception, because it's up here, that's where it starts for me. My disease starts thinking. And if I don't have a sponsor or someone I'm talking to on a day-to-day basis that keeps me in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, I can't live. And so for a few weeks, I had no sponsor. And I was sitting in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous dying. I was a newcomer, and women were giving me their phone numbers. We didn't have cell phones. Cell phones, we had those little pay phones, you could pull off to the side of the road, stop and call somebody that had the phone book attached with this little cord on it so you can look up numbers. That's the kind of phones we had when I got sober. So it was amazing to me that these women were giving me their phone numbers, but I would get home and not call anybody because I couldn't. I didn't know if I could lift the phone up, and I didn't want to talk to anybody. So I'm at the glass house, and I'm sitting in the meeting thinking that as soon as that meeting is over, I'm going to go drink. I need to go pick up a bottle of vodka and drink it because I'm irritable, restless, and discontent because I'm still having these voices up here talking to me constantly. And they were loud. And that day, this woman, and I have to say this, at the end of every meeting at my home group, we say the Our Father, and people hold hands. And this was a Saturday morning meeting, and Al-Anons, it was an open AA meeting, so it had Al-Anons and AAs in there. And after everybody said the Our Father, let go of their hands, where I was seated, I had my back up against a wall, but I couldn't get out because people were in the aisles talking and sharing and hugging and doing all that other good stuff you do at the in-person meetings. And I wanted out and I couldn't get out. People were standing in the aisles. And so what I did was I shoved a few chairs. And when you're a 4'11" and a fourth, and you see chairs coming at you, a lot of people jumped out of my way because they didn't know what was going on. And as I'm going out of the meeting, this woman stood in front of me. She had the most piercing, kind blue eyes. And what she said to me was, "Hi, my name is Sherry, and why don't you give me a practice call?" And she handed me her phone number. And all I could, and she, I guess, I don't know how she knew I was new, but I had the deer in the headlight kind of look. And she said, "This is what you say. You say, 'Hi, this is Pat, and this is a practice call.'" And I was like, okay. So I left that meeting. She distracted me enough because practice for me is the word that I use with my students. So I understood that word. When the other women were saying, "Call me," I didn't understand that. But when she said, "Give me a practice call," I understood the word practice. And I left that meeting, got in the car, and instead of turning left where the liquor store was, I turned right and I went all the way home. And when I got home, the amazing thing that happened for me was when I got home, I went into the apartment and I had deadbolts, chains on the door. I mean, I had about 4 locks. And as I'm locking myself in, I'm thinking to myself, I didn't stop and get a drink. I didn't stop and pick up the vodka. And all I could do was put my hand in my pocket and pull out this woman's number. Now, we also had answering machines during this time. And I thought to myself, because I'm a keen alcoholic, I thought to myself, well, she told me to give her a practice call. It's Saturday. It's a nice day, and she's probably not at home, but I can talk to a machine. So I dialed her number, and I was waiting for, "Hello, this is Sherry. We're not at home right now, so please leave a message." So when the phone rang, I heard the pickup, and I said, "Hi." And then all of a sudden, she said, "Hi." And I was like, where's the rest of the recorded message? Because I need to talk to the machine. And what she said to me was, "What's going on?" And you see, those weeks of being in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and not sharing with another human being what was going on up here, everything spewed out. Everything spewed out. And she let me talk. And then when I stopped for a minute, she said, "Hey, do you have a big book?" And I was like, "Yes." She said, "Have you read it?" I said, "Yes, I've read the big book, from the beginning to the end." And then she said, "Well, the answer is in the big book of how to stay sober." And she said, "It's on the very first page." And then she said to me, "I'll wait on the phone until you go get your big book." My first thought was, how did she know that the phone and the big book weren't right next to each other? And so I got off the phone and I went and got my big book. Now, my first big book was a softback cover big book. And the reason I bought the softback was because I was going to read and see what everything was about in Alcoholics Anonymous. And then I was going to leave. I wasn't going to spend a whole lot of money on a hardback book. And so when she told me to get my book, and she told me to look on the very first page of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous for the answer, when she said, "Do you know how to stay sober one day at a time?" And the answer is on the first page. And when I opened my big book, the answer on the first page was, now I have a hardback now, there is a blank page. I knew nothing about how to stay sober one day at a time. And I said, "There's nothing there." And she said, "That's exactly right." She said, "I know how to stay sober, and I'll take you through the steps." And so what happened for me was a journey that lasted for 22 years. And what Sherry did for me for those 22 years was we went through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous together, page by page. I sponsor people. That is exactly how I sponsor people. I take them through the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, page by page. And Sherry always told me, read the black parts. Read what's there. The space in between the lines. She said, there is no space. There is no in between the lines of Alcoholics Anonymous. You read the words that are there on the page. And that's exactly what we did. We went through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I learned from Sherry how to take other people through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. When Sherry passed away 7 years ago, I was given her big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. What I wrote in the margins of my book, when she took me through the book, I read the same words that she wrote in the margin of her book. I was reading her words and hearing her voice. And so when I take people through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, I take them through it just like Sherry took me through it. And I use her book alongside mine. Because when I read her words, her handwriting in the book, it lets me know that this is a program that the only way I can keep what I have is to give away what I've got. And that's the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't do BB. I don't do therapy. You know, what I give you is what was given to me, the pure 100% of the first 164 pages of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't know how to sponsor any other way. You see, I was taught well in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous at the Glass House. They call our group the God Squad. I never heard that when I was newly sober because I was too busy up here. But I was doing footwork because Sherry had me be of service. I got involved at service work right away when Sherry became my sponsor. As we're going through the book, she would tell me, get to the meeting 30 minutes early. Get to the meetings, make coffee. We used to have smoking in our building, and I had to empty ashtrays. And I'm not a smoker, and I was always a little upset about that because I empty these dirty ashtrays and cleaning them, and I'm not the one that's doing all the smoking. But I did it. Begrudgingly, I did it. And everything she taught me about service work came true. When I started taking the coffee commitment and doing coffee for the group, you know, somebody else got there one day earlier than a little bit earlier than I did, and they started making coffee. And so when I went in there, the coffee pots were going, and I came storming out, and she grabbed me and she said, what's going on? And I said, it's my job to make the coffee. And then she said, oh, so you think it's your job? She said, did it ever occur to you that they are also listening to their sponsor who told them to make coffee? She said, now you don't get to covet that job. What you get to do now is take out the trash. And then I'm on trash duty. And she always changed my service commitment. I was taking out the trash. I would arrive at the Saturday morning meeting and clean the bathrooms. I did all of that. And then one day she told me, you're going to stop hiding behind taking out the trash, hiding behind the coffee pot. You're going to stand out here and greet with me. And when she said greet with me, she showed me how to be a greeter. She stood on the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous with me and showed me. You can tell people what to do, but you can't make them do it. But if you show people what to do and you're doing it, that's how this program works for me. You know, Abby brought the message to Bill. Bill took the message to Dr. Bob. Dr. Bob and Bill took it to Bill D. You can only do it if you do the action. And that's what I was taught in Alcoholics Anonymous. I told you that I did service work. I sponsor people. I went to an early sobriety. I was going to conventions. Sherry had me showing up at all these little weekend conventions, and I learned to be and act like a person of integrity, of showing up with responsibility. I was taught that. And I learned in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous how to be the best person I could be for this 24 hours, day by day. I don't take a drink today. I try not to harm anyone today because that's not what I want to do. In the big book, there was a couple of chapters before I had Sherry as a sponsor that I skipped. I skipped the chapter to the agnostic, one, because I didn't know what an agnostic was. I skipped the chapter that said to the employer. I, you know, I was an employer. I was employee. So I didn't read that. I didn't read the family afterwards, and I didn't read the chapter to the wives. But with Sherry guiding me through, we didn't skip any more of those chapters. And I will tell you this, I every teaching job I had, originally I'm from Ohio, Dayton, Ohio. That's where I grew up. Was born in the state of Kentucky, but my parents moved to Ohio when I was a baby. And I left a teaching job in Ohio because I thought they were coming. I don't know who they were, but I thought, well, the jig is up. I was drinking a lot. My drinking life was starting to spill over into my work. So I left and I moved to Texas. My plan was to work in Texas, teach for a couple of years, head to California. Well, as you can see, it says Fort Worth, Texas underneath my name. I didn't get to California, but I do get to California when I go out to see Sharon, my sponsor that I have today. Sharon teaches me to be a seeker, a spiritual seeker. And that's what I am. I seek to be a spiritual human being, passing on what I've been given. She tells me to be a force for good, Pat, because, when the pandemic started, it's so amazing. I told you my family, my siblings are not in any program. And what I get to see is when they got locked down, they didn't have what I had. I had Zoom meetings. I mean, I've spoken in England and in Scotland, and I've been, to Australia on Zoom, and I've been to Canada, and I've been to different of the, 50 states that we have. I have been to meetings all over the place because of Zoom, and I did not lose or get wrapped up in some of the madness of what some people being locked down with, because we have a spiritual program here. We're here for the newcomer, and we're also here for people who have a lot of sobriety time. It saddens me to hear when someone can't or won't get what we have been so freely given. My problem centers up here. And that's why a lot of alcoholics, if they do take their own lives, they choose a gun because it quiets those stupid voices. When I get too far out there, I have to have someone to talk to, and that's my sponsor. And when my sponsor is not available, I call one of the other people that she sponsors. That's that lifeline for me, is to reach out to another alcoholic in the rooms of AA and out of the rooms. I love the people who have been on Zoom and who got sober on Zoom and stay sober. Those newcomers, we have to be here. They have to find us. We have started to have some of our in-person meetings. I choose to go to one in-person meeting at my home group, but I Zoom anywhere from 10 to 12 meetings a week on Zoom. And my Zoom home group, I told you, is PG and Chill. And it's a great group. It's got people, and it's got great sobriety, and it's got lots of newcomers. And when people go back out, we don't shoot our wounded. We welcome them back in because we know what they're dealing with. They're dealing with this. They're dealing with a spiritual malady. They have that compulsion once they take that drink again, the obsession begins again. And the only way that I can keep from doing that is to be in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. When I got sober, there was a line that in the big book that, or a paragraph that kind of always choked me up. And it is on page 164. And it's the last paragraph. Because you see, I abandoned God a long time ago, but I abandoned God in a way that, for me, God deserted me, is what I thought. When I was 11 years old, I said a prayer and it wasn't answered because I was thinking of God as Santa Claus. And I became a little bit rebellious. And for me, you know, God and I played duck and cover with God for a long time when I was out there drinking. You know, God today to me is who I reach out for first before I try to listen to my self-reliance. But this paragraph is the one that I didn't understand when I first got to Alcoholics Anonymous, but I understand it today. The longer I'm sober, the more the meaning for it is a little bit different. It says, abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. And I had to look up the word abandon. And when I looked it up, the word abandon means give up completely. And then it also says it's a course of action. It's a practice or a way of thinking. And today I know God has always been in my corner because I put myself in many dangerous situations when I was out there drinking. When you're a woman, at least for me, a woman drinker, you do things that you normally would not do. I was cleaning out my closet today and I found some cards, index cards. And on those index cards, and I didn't even realize I had kept them, were names of men who were married who I slept with. And Sherry told me that my amends to those men were to leave them alone and not contact them. And it's weird that I found those index cards today. And I shredded them today thinking, you know, for 29 years, I have not slept with a married man. For 29 years, I've honored people who are in a marriage, their relationship to one another. You know, so my course of action was asking God to help me. And I had to look up the word trudge. And we gave Sherry a dictionary since this book was written in the 30s. And in the 30s, the definition of trudge was to walk slowly and with purpose. You see, when I first came in and I saw that word, trudge the road of happy destiny, I thought, well, trudge to me means you're going through muck. But today, when I look at it, it means to walk slowly and with purpose. Yeah, I'm going to be trudging, but I'm trudging the road with you. You are on that same road with me. And it's a road of happy destiny because we have been given freedom from alcohol. I have what is called alcoholism, not alcoholism, because I'm still an alcoholic. And the ism part of me, I can get irritable, restless, and discontent. And I can act the way I used to act. But this time, when I act that way, I'm not taking a drink. You know, my disease is cunning, baffling, powerful, And as Sherry would tell me, it's patient. It waits for you. It does push-ups. It's out there hitting that baseball bat as hard as it can to grab me. In early sobriety, my alcoholism would say when I hit something that was hard, my first thought was always, a drink would fix this. A drink would fix this. This parent wants me to call him back. Why am I calling this parent back? A drink will fix that feeling. Today, my alcoholism is a little bit different. It doesn't shout at me. It tries to use a little logic. Pat, you're tired. You worked all day today cleaning up the house. Wouldn't it be nice to just call it a nice early evening and not do that? I get a text from Carol, and it's like, do I really want to do that? My mind is telling me that, but my lips are saying yes, and I'm texting yes to her, but my brain still wants to get me. You see, unless I'm in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and sharing with you and my sponsor and with my sponsees and working with others, I'm a basket case, and I don't want to be a basket case. I will tell you 2 amends that I made that were very special. My dad died when I had 11 years of sobriety, and he was in the program for a little while. And we had some good years together. He and I, we went to meetings together. But at 18 years of sobriety, my father took another drink, and he never got back to the rooms of AA. And I'm his daughter. And I remember when I was hitting my 18th year, I was talking to Sherry about my fears that I'm so much like him, and I tried not to be. And she said, Pat, that's your father's journey. That's not yours. She said, be grateful for the times that he was sober and you were sober and you got to act like a daughter. And that's what I remember. And I also try to remember that he was also experiencing dementia. My second amends was to my mom. Because of having all of these kids, she couldn't leave an alcoholic man. So we stayed. And so she was an untreated Al-Anon. And this coming December, it'll be 5 years since she passed. And this coming December, it will be 5 years since I had my second bout of cancer. And when my mother was in hospice, my doctor, my oncologist said, well, you can go now and spend a little time with her in hospice, or you can go during the funeral, but you can't miss, many radiation treatments, because then, that puts us back. And so what I got to do was go during hospice. And I was there with her for about 4 days. And then I came back, and she passed away on December the 8th, 2016. And the time that I spent with my mother and my siblings at that time, we were in the room with her, and my siblings and I, we were telling stories. And even though her eyes were closed, there were a couple of times when I was sitting next to the bed, I could see that she was smiling, because what they told me told us in hospice is the last thing that the last sense that disappears is hearing. So they can still hear you. They may not be able to communicate with you otherwise, but they can still hear you. And so when we were laughing in that room and telling stories about Mom and her cooking and how she disciplined us, how she disciplined the first 4, which was different from the last ones, that they got away with murder, but the older ones, we were the we were the guinea pigs that got it. We finally said, well, she must have been tired towards the end with all those kids. So that's why y'all got away with a lot of stuff. You see, the laughter that I get in Alcoholics Anonymous, even through sadness, is a lot better than picking up a drink of alcohol to numb feelings. And I don't have to numb my feelings today. I get to go through them, and I get to talk to my sponsor. And if I have a good idea, I run it by my sponsor. And usually Sharon tells me, well, no, that's not a good idea. Why don't we try it this way? And I'm grateful for that. Even with 29 years of sobriety, I still check things out with my sponsor. I have to, because I have a disease of perception. I like Clancy I's tape. I heard that tape in early sobriety. Sherry gave me that tape in early sobriety. I had to listen to Clancy I, and the one that always gets me is that disease of perception. You see, I take a drink of alcohol in me, and I think I'm tall and have big boobs and a great dancer. And even if I'm not drinking, if I have not touched base with a sponsor, I don't think too straight, because my disease is waiting for me. It's patient. It's a patient disease. It always has been and always will be. That's why I say I have alcoholism, not alcoholism. I have many, many examples of the isms when I watched my father I didn't see him take his drink, but at 15 years of sobriety, I could see what he was doing. He stopped calling his sponsor because he started calling me. And I would always say, Dad, have you checked this out with your sponsor? Have you talked about this? And when he went back to drinking after 18 years of sobriety, my siblings called me in Texas. We got to get Dad back in AA. I said, all I can do is be here for anybody else's dad who walks in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Maybe somebody else's daughter in Ohio can be there for him. You see, I can't make anybody take this deal. All I can do is share my experience, strength, and hope. And when I share my experience, strength, and hope to let you know that I have a good life today, and I do. I retired from teaching in 2019. And I was at this school for 29 years. I'd never been in any school that long. You see, I knew after 4 years I'd have to pick up and go somewhere else, and that's exactly what I would do, hopping from school to school. But when I retired in 2019 of August, I was not asked to leave. I did not think of a lie to get out of this job. I retired from this job, and I retired in good standings. And before Sherry passed away, I was voted Teacher of the Year. Sherry told me to stick and stay. She said, just stay. We don't know what God has in store for you. You just stay one day at a time. And I stayed one day at a time for 29 years. And before Sherry passed away, she got to see me be Teacher of the Year from my school. You see, that's the gift of the program, Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'll end it with this. I have a former student. I taught in the Catholic school, and I have a former student. He's 18 years old. And 2 years ago, he asked me to be his sponsor for confirmation. This young man was a toot when he was a kindergarten student. So when he needed a sponsor for confirmation, his mom asked him, she said, well, do you want your brother? And he said, no, I want Miss Cooper to be my sponsor, because I learned a lot from Miss Cooper about the love of God. He and I had lunch a couple of weeks ago, and he's a nice young man. And he told me, he said, Miss Cooper, when I come back to town, I'll give you a call. He lives in Dallas and I live in Fort Worth. And he was visiting his parents and his grandparents. And he said, I'll call you and we'll go to lunch again. You see, it's the love of the people in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous that's helped me be here and a sober member, and also to be a woman of integrity and responsibility, and to do the very best I can for the suffering alcoholic that is still out there. And I'd like to thank you for asking me to share my experience, strength, and hope with you at the Serenity Club, because I never had serenity until I came into Alcoholics Anonymous. So thank you.